Welcome to another episode of Black Scholars Speak as we laugh, inspire, uplift, and challenge the status quo. This is Black Scholars
Hello,
Speak.
everyone. My name is Dr. Feylyn Lewis, and I'm privileged to join you all today to talk about how you can support youth caregivers. So, I stand before you not just as a researcher and an advocate, but also as someone with lived experience of being a youth caregiver myself. So, very quickly, when I was 11 years old, my mother had a botched spinal surgery, and that left her in a position where she was unable to walk. And me and my older brother, we were thrust into youth caregiving at a very young age. So I started taking care of my mom at age 11 and my brother at age 19. And that changed our lives forever. I knew that I wanted to go on and support other children and adolescents with family caregiving responsibilities. And so that took me on a journey of doing research and advocacy work around the world. What I've learned in talking with thousands of children and adolescents and young adults and millennials is that there are some key things that I hear that youth caregivers want in terms of their recommendations for how we can support them. The first thing that I always hear is recognition. Young people want to be recognized for the contributions that they are making to their family, but also for the contributions that they are making to undergird and support our broken and failed health and social care system. They are saving us billions of dollars in care every year. So it's important that we recognize the value that children, adolescents, and young people add to their families as caregivers. The second thing that I always hear is that they want money and direct aid to their family. So you've heard the phrase, the rising tide lifts all boats. Well, that's really true when it comes down to families with illness and disability. So the idea is that the government gives more money, support, tangible financial support to families where there's illness and disability, that lessens the burden that a young person who's a caregiver might experience. So that helps lift that family out of poverty. And that is incredibly important. And that's what young people say that they want. The third thing that I always hear is guidance and someone to talk to. So being a caregiver at a very young age is full of complex emotions. So children and adolescents tell me that they do caregiving because they love their family member, that they're bonded and they're attached to them, right? Caregiving can be a good thing. But caregiving at a young age also means that they experience greater rates of depression, anxiety, and even self-harming ideations. So we know that caregivers who are children and adolescents, we know that they're at greater risk for very serious mental health impacts. And we have a duty, a responsibility, in fact, to support them. They say that they want a trained, trauma-informed expert that they can talk to. That can be any of us. All of us can be champions for youth caregivers. We can do that by educating ourselves on the experience of what it's like to be a youth caregiver, and then also being armed and prepared with resources. I'm going to talk a little bit about the resources that are available in our country. So the first is the American Association of Caregiving Youth. That's based in Boca Raton, Florida. That is our number one premier organization that's solely dedicated to supporting children and adolescents with family caregiving responsibilities. We also have CASM. CASM is another nonprofit national organization that supports children who've been impacted by parental cancer. We also have the Elizabeth Dole Foundation and the Hidden Helpers Coalition. That supports children who are caring for someone who's been injured in military service. And for us in our country, that usually means a veteran from the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. There's also our national caregiving lobbying and advocacy organizations, such as the National Alliance for Caregiving, the Family Caregiver Alliance, and Caregiver Cross Generations. So there is no excuse for us to be unarmed with information. There are so many resources out there where you can learn more. I also want to speak to just a little bit about what you can do to support the mental health of a youth caregiver. So, the first thing I always encourage anyone to do is to listen. Listen with an ear of empathy and openness and validation, right? Recognize that young person as a caregiver and say, you are a youth caregiver. That's something that a young person can be proud of, that they are making amazing contributions to their family and society. And they're also gaining skills like maturity, emotional regulation, um, volunteerism, sense of altruism, all of those amazing things that they're learning from being a youth caregiver. The other thing is to take action and intervene. So if the youth caregiver talks to you about feeling alone, isolated, scared, staying up at night out of fear, panic attacks, or even more severe mental health issues, make sure that you connect them with your local mental health resource. There's a number that are nationally known, such as NAMI, but find your local resource and make sure that that young person gets the support that they need. I also want to speak to our faith communities, as we know that especially for Black and Brown youth caregivers, many of them are engaged in faith communities, and it's important that we also know what we can do to support them. So the first thing to do is, of course, identify and recognize youth caregivers. If you know of a family where there's an adult who's injured, ill, sick, disabled, or maybe addicted to a substance, and there's a child in the home, that most likely means that there's a youth caregiver present, right? So ask questions, be open, and recognize and identify them. Next, what you can do as a member of a faith community is make sure that you can plan support groups. Once you've armed yourself with information, have an opportunity so that young people can come together within your faith community and talk and relate to each other. Have social time, such as outings and doing fun activities. Give them a chance that they can have a break, but also talk to other folks who get it, who really understand. I also ask that you incorporate anti-ableist practices into worship. Recognize that not everyone may be able to stand or clap their hands, right? So being open and responsive to those with different needs, that's incredibly important. I also ask that you ensure that your staff is trained and engages in trauma-informed practices. That's something that all of us can do. And then finally, if your church is in a position to financially support youth caregivers, consider a dedicated youth caregiver scholarship. Help them tangibly if they decide they want to go on to college or university. That's an amazing opportunity to support their goals and aspirations to ensure that that happens for them and recognize the work that they are giving and performing in their families. That's a great thing. I finally want to end on this. Liberation is not the absence of care. I think caregiving, even at a young age, can be a good thing. It can be a wonderful thing and a mark of a morally good society. It's especially true for us in multi-generational families. Care is beautiful. What is not beautiful are the very severe mental health impacts, the negative outcomes that we see. That is what is the issue, right? And inappropriate care. So we want to make sure that we come alongside children and adolescents with caregiving roles, that we give them the support that they need so they can continue to thrive, do well, and achieve their dreams. Thank you.